You gonna start?
Hmm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ready? Hi there. Welcome to the Poker with a Purpose YouTube channel. Our mission for this channel is to take you deeper than poker and to show how the way we show up on the table is always a reflection of the way we show up off the table. In this first video, we're going to be going over a hand between Eric Persson and JRB from High Stakes Poker. We're going to go over player profiles and comfort zones, conscious versus unconscious decisions, and how to create space for awareness in the moment to choose from intuition versus unconscious fear.
As you watch this, recognize the way you act and react to poker table when faced with a pressure situation or a big pot.
And if we sound very mechanical and serious, it's because we are.
Absolutely. We are robots, and this is the worst version of AI you've ever seen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hang on a second, AJ. This guy.
He makes things fun.
200 more.
Persson raises to 265K.
It's kind of crazy because at first when he cut the 65,000 out, he was shaking his head like he didn't even want to call.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a weird for Robert. It's
It's a mind.
Man.
Oh, almost all in.
You know what?
So, I mean, it's important to understand, like you've spoken to, like what kind of player each player is. Specifically, two players here. We got Eric Parsons, who is known to play through his passion, but more playing through his anger. Like, anger, his ego is driven by this desire to prove that he's better than you. It's not about him getting lucky. It's not about him hitting hands. It's about him outplaying you in a hand, making you fold a better hand, it's about being more aggressive than you. He has to show that he's the big boss, he's the macho, he's the one in charge, and you just there playing with him.
Yeah, or more like going down in flames than doing something like making a bad call.
Yeah. I mean, he's not gonna he's always gonna err on the side of aggression because for him, it's very justifiable that, hey, I went down fighting. I didn't give up. I didn't just go out weak. I didn't go out meekly with fear. Like for him, fear is the thing he resists the most. So because he resists fear the most, he's constantly fighting it. So this is why you see him at the table fighting with aggression. He's like, I know I'm fucking scared, but guess what? I'm gonna fight through it, and I'm gonna fight you for it. So as a result, we gotta expect him to, in any situation where it gets close, that a blow up is coming, especially in the bigger pot, because then his fight gets activated and he needs to prove himself. Hey, I'm better than you, and you know what better than you means? I'm gonna fight you, and I'm gonna beat your ass, and I'm gonna win. And if that means he gets knocked out in a fight, he's completely cool with that. But him backing away from a fight is unacceptable forever. Like he will never allow himself to back away from a fight. It's a casual game.
Yeah.
This is what we used to at this day and age, that if it's a reg game, doesn't matter if it's 10-20 no limit or 100-200 no limit, that players that are professionals that do this for a living and make money from it, they know the basic formula of aggression pre-flop, which is you're not supposed to be calling in spots. Most likely, you're supposed to be raising with the entire range that you're calling with.
Yeah.
It's just you take control of the pot, then you clear out the field, and you have an advantage, tactical advantage.
Yeah, and more important, and emotionally, there's a perception that being the non-aggressor is weak.
And it leads you to being outplayed.
Yeah, out of control, weak. It's so it's uncomfortable. So that goes back into the perception of calling being weak, calling with the worst hand being outplayed. So that energy of
And it limits your options because people will assume that if you're calling,
your hand is capped.
your hand is capped, even if it's not. It's just that's the assumption that's going to be made. When you're raising, and let's say you're an aggressive player, the assumption is going to be, hey, you could be doing that with 6-5 suited or aces and anywhere in between. So then you're giving yourself more room to operate. And also, when you take control of the pot, it's almost like you make the other player play in their heels. So they're playing from a standpoint of like, okay, I need to hit a hand to kind of play back or to be able to stay in the spot, as opposed to you, who's now in charge of the hand and you're playing heads up. you have a tactical advantage because you don't really need to hit a hand.
Because probably if Blonde 3-bets the button, Eric's folding ace-9.
So this is more of a reflection on JRB and who he is than anything else. Most players are going to play to what they're comfortable with, even if they're going to portray it as if I'm doing this because of the opponent. Majority of players are going to be in their comfort zone. They're like, this is the spot I normally 3-bet in when I have this range.
Yeah, so Blonde's not comfortable taking the aggression lead and barreling and whatever. He's more
JRB's discomfort there is pretty simple, as we get to see later on in the hand, is that he doesn't want to play big pot with a hand he doesn't feel comfortable with. And for him, one pair hand is uncomfortable. Ace high, which is how he sees it at that moment, is really uncomfortable. Because if he 3-bets on the button and then one of them moves in, even if it's Persons, he's gonna fold. He's uncomfortable, even though the hand on the button seems extremely strong. He's going to be extremely uncomfortable putting huge amounts of money in with that hand, and he's going to fold. So he knows he's basically playing small ball poker. Yeah. He's setting himself up to like, hey, I hit a hand, I'm in position, my hand is disguised, I could make money, I could play it safe. So if I don't hit a hand, I fold. I don't lose more money than I need to. But now if I raise with ace king, what am I really doing? I'm overplaying a hand the way these young kids are. And then they're just playing this high variance poker for no reason, where I could play smart. So in his mind, safety is smart. Playing small ball until you get a monster hand is smart. He'd much rather turn a hand to a bluff, a hand that has no value. Why? Because then he could fold. There's no attachment to it. But if he has a real hand, he doesn't want to turn into a bluff because then he actually has attachment to it, and then he's in a position that he doesn't want to be in, which is a clear... He wants to have an easy decision. Clear fold, clear call, clear shove. Everyone has different modes. You know, what I'm speaking to is JRB standard mode.
Yeah.
That's his, like, I'm operating from normal procedure. There's a JRB tilt mode that's a completely different player. That guy is capable of massive blowups, and that's the guy everybody waits for. That's the guy that they actually like to play with, not the guy, not this player who just wants to hit a hand, keeps pots small, and just basically likes to get showdown value. And this JRB who's losing, who's stuck, and then it's a completely different player. Then he's basically turns everything into a bluff, merges his range without realizing that's what he's doing, and he's just like pressing buttons, like aggression buttons. And it is like a bipolar almost thing, but it's a great example of what we face when we're out there against players. They're emotional people. They're emotional creatures. We keep thinking of people as poker players are logical and control of their actions. In reality is they're not. At some point, a part of them is going to take over. That's going to drive their actions. They have no logical basis, no poker basis. And if you take them out of that experience and you ask JRB, what are you doing? JRB will tell you, I don't have no idea why I did that.
Taking a swig.
So JRB on the river, his comfort zone is simple. He played the hand to the showdown value, which is what he wanted, like where pots stay small enough, he's in control. And he got there. He got to the river, which is like, thank God, I'm here. There's a decent pot here. Now I'm supposed to bet for value because I have top pair, top kicker. I have a good hand. I'm
Yeah,
up
everything is standard and within his comfort zone. Flop is a standard bet, turn is a standard bet. Eric is checking quickly on every street. I'm comfortable that I'm ahead.
And he's up against a person like Parsons, because who he knows is calling him very light, right?
Yeah.
Out of anybody at the table, maybe outside of Jennifer Tilly, he knows that Eric Parsons is the guy who's probably calling him the widest. So he feels very comfortable that this specific player is snap calling you down on this board. He's almost always ahead. So JRB's comfort zone is, I'm going to bet for value here, you know, make a nice little half pot bet on the river, and he's either going to call me and I have him beat, or he's going to call me and sometimes he has me beat, but I know I'm supposed to bet here for value. So this is to him right in the comfort zone, and he feels good about it.
Yeah, I don't even think he had a thought in his head that he was beat at all. I think he knew where he was the whole time.
Well, so that's when the unconscious part comes in, right? Conscious versus unconscious. And this is what you spoke into about how we plan consciously and don't realize it, how our unconscious thoughts are driving our actions and our reactions. So on the river, he felt comfortable making that bet because it's a standard bet that's in his comfort zone. I have to bet here for value. This is normal. And then Eric obviously went through his own thing and got triggered by it because at that point, Eric was already calling him down with a thought in his head, "Oh, I'm probably not good here, but I'm not backing down from a fight. Right now, it's just kind of like a little standoff. So I'm gonna keep calling you."
Yeah, Eric has good instincts. Eric knew he was not ahead after the river bet.
Yeah, and it's pretty obvious. I mean, you don't have to have great instincts knowing JRB because JRB in that spot, he's just gonna play it as straight ahead as possible. It's a four-handed pot pre-flop, and he's in the button. He's gonna play it based on the value of his hand.
Is he betting ace queen?
It's close.
Ace jack, no.
Yeah, I don't think he's betting ace jack. I think ace queen, ace king is betting there because it's like such a strong hand because he didn't raise pre-flop. So once he bets there, it's in his comfort zone. Eric gets triggered. He was already getting triggered. You could tell the way he was snap calling. That's Eric's trigger. It's build up. It's getting there. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna keep fucking with me? Look, I'm calling you. Don't fuck with me." It's like almost he's letting you know, like
Standoffish.
you're pressing my buttons. I'm gonna right now show you that I'm not scared of you. But what his mind is saying is, this guy's really messing with me. He thinks he's better than me. He doesn't know who I am. I'm gonna show you who I am. Like
Which again is
unconsciously what he's hearing.
Yeah, which again is the story in his head. JRB's just doing JRB things.
Yep.
JRB's doing standard things based on his hand strength and whatever, but in Eric's mind, it's a fight.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unconscious because we could even see it on the river as it happened. So JRB made quote unquote a standard bet that he feels comfortable doing, and you could see it as soon as it happened. Eric Parsons went from because he gave up on the hand because when he checked the river, there's a ton of times that JRB checks back, and he knows that. So he was basically giving up on this pot. Eric saying, "You know what? We didn't get to fight, and it's fine. Whatever. I'm okay with losing this pot." But then JRB makes that bet on the river, and it's not a big bet; it's a small bet, and it's now Eric knows I'm no good because he just innately knows that JRB's not bluffing there. But what he's hearing in his head is, "This motherfucker really is trying to mess with me. Like he could have just checked back here. I would have gave him the pot." It might not play out exactly in those words, but the meaning behind them is there that, hey, I was giving up on this pot. I was giving it to you, but you wanted to keep fucking with me.
Well, it's almost like Eric is saying, yeah, don't mess with me, don't pick on me. I want this pot easy. I want to go to showdown. Let me go to showdown. And then when JRB doesn't oblige that, it's like, oh, you want to fight? Well,
Yeah,
I'm gonna fight you.
exactly.
Yeah.
He's like, "You want to fight me? Well, guess what? I was going to let you go, but now I'm going to fight you." And you could see change in the moment because you could see the anger building up. He shakes his head. Lips get pursed. You could see the energy building up. There's actual physiological change in his body, in his demeanor. You could see the anger's taking over. Now he's in a fight mode, defending himself mode. Now this is personal. This is not about poker anymore. And he does have good instincts because he knows innately when he's no good. Oftentimes going to get overridden by his need to fight. So you'll see at times when he knows he shouldn't do it, but he's like, I'm going for it anyway because I'm going to go out swinging.
Well, yeah, there's a big ace queen hand versus Keating. Ace queen, Keating flopped a set, river to boat. And he's like, oh, I know. That was like one hand bled into the other hand. He lost aces the hand previously. And then that hand, he gets ace queen, and he makes a big 4-bet, creates attachment to the pot, and then just starts barreling, even though in the moment you could see his mind going like, I shouldn't be doing this. I should not be doing this, but I can't let it go.
Yep. And he doesn't feel any shame about it. Well, you've seen him storm off after he loses a big pot. So you could see that there is that conversation that comes up in his head, you fucked up. Like, why would you do that? That's so stupid. Because obviously he's angry at him. There's a voice in his head is telling him, like, why'd you do that? Why did you just give away all your money for no reason? But ultimately, the voice that he operates through is still the voice of, I get to be the toughest, the strongest, and I cannot back down. Because if I back down, then who am I? His ego loses all identity. And then for him, that's death. The death of that identity is the same as him dying.
Yeah.
This is how important it is. This is why he'd rather lose $1 million to Antonius barreling off, drawing dead, than to actually give up.
Antonius leads for 150K.
I'm all in.
Persson jams!
Cool. Yeah, I'm dead. Fuck. Nice sand pack.
Even though he instinctively knows that he's no good. And I really believe that if you take out that ego from him, he's actually a decent player. But it's ultimately that part that needs to fight for everything, no matter what, doesn't back down. That's his downfall, is because he can only operate from basically one perspective.
Yeah, which, I mean, I know that side very well.
So that's actually a pretty good segue, because even casual whales, very few will dark check with a flush draw.
All right. That didn't take long.
I check.
Pot's getting big. Doc check from Eric.
So there's a backdoor flush draw that comes in.
Yeah.
And here's why. Because you create an attachment to the pot to hitting a hand and then getting paid on it. If you're dark checking in that spot,
And
you're
risking
basically
not getting paid.
yeah, you're missing out on the payoff. So, especially from a player who plays regularly, he's not just like some, some complete casual whale. Like, regardless of how you feel about Eric's game, you know he's played poker a ton and he understands the game. So, from his
And
perspective,
he understands JRB.
yes, it's important. He understands that JRB is a soft, weak player, specifically in that spot where JRB is not in a state of barreling off. He's not on a tilt where he's in a state of like, I'm going to attack or I'm going to just mash buttons. JRB is just playing soft JRB game. The casual, I'm drinking and sipping wine, I'm chilling, I'm relaxing.
And he's more likely to be calling river bets than he is to be betting himself. Like, he'll bet the river with the top of his range, but he will call a bet to be curious about it.
Eric knows that JRB will check back there a lot of hands he should be betting.
Yeah, but then he'll also call it.
Yes.
So if Eric had a flush draw, he's not dark checking.
That's very unlikely. Yeah, because he specifically being up against JRB, Eric is aware enough to know that I'm going to miss out so much value with a hand like flush draw. And here's another thing. So he called the flop, right? He snap called the flop. So there's only very few combos there that he has a flush draw that comes in on the turn.
Yeah.
He could have some open, like maybe some gut shots on the flop that now turn the flush draw with it. But there's not that many combos that all of a sudden bring flush draw for him as well. Right,
Yeah,
so on the flop, you could have a hand like 7-9 of diamonds where he has a gut shot with a backdoor flush draw. For example, that's 7-4 of diamonds. That's literally two hands. Can ace be? Yeah, and he could have obviously the ace X of diamonds. But here's the thing. The turn gave away a lot of information. On the turn, let's say he has ace 4 of diamonds, which flop he just has baby ace, and turn he turns nut flush draw. Now, we know Eric to be aggressive player, hyper aggressive, and likes to fight for pots. If he opens up a flush draw on a turn, nut flush draw, does he snap check call without even a thought of raising?
I check.
All right.
Like, there was zero consideration of raising.
Yeah.
There was only, my hand is good enough to call here. It's not good enough to raise or even considering raising.
Yeah, we said this goes into understanding the intention behind opponent behavior. Is understanding like, I mean, we said he was giving off the vibe of like his actions were standoffish, like don't fuck with me, slow down, appease me in going to showdown, and letting this hand go without a fight, so I don't have to fight you. So if we're looking at his snap checks as like, what is his intention? That is his intention trying to get us to barrel him? No, his intention is to get us to slow down and keep the pot small. So if that's the case, there's not even any space for thought process in there. There's not even any space for him to be like, do I turn this into a bluff? Do I have the best hand? There's nothing like that. So the snap checks is like
Snap check call.
snap check call, yeah.
Yeah, it shows that he's saying I have a good enough hand to just quickly check and quickly call. There's no thought process there. There's not a thought process of folding because my hand is too strong to fold, and there's zero thought process of raising, which is very important because he's so aggressive and because he gets triggered into fighting for pots a lot, that if he has a nut flush draw there or he turn a draw on a turn, there would be consideration of raising. There would be at least a thought of like, hold on, I'm not just going to be calling down, especially if he called in the flop, let's say with a gut shot and turn flush draw, because now he knows like I'm not calling down, or is he asking himself like, am I going to keep calling down like I'm scared of him with a flush draw and a straight draw? Like, no, I'm going to attack. So there's going to be at least a consideration from a player like that anytime he's going to open equity on turn or turn equity, that we should expect him to, if not attack us, to at least consider it. But there was zero consideration of doing anything but snap calling and moving on to the river.
Yeah.
So that means we could pretty safely put him on ace X.
Which JRB did.
You looked like you weren't sure you wanted to call. And I was like, please call, please call, please call. And then you're like, well, I don't think my ace queen is good enough here, so maybe I need to raise. Let me raise just to make sure, because it's highly unlikely JRB has diamond flush and he can't call me. So maybe I have to call you. Maybe. Wow.
So if we know that pretty much his entire range on the turn, based not just on the action, but how fast it went, and that his hand is capped to ace X, not flush draws, etc. Then on the river comes in, a backdoor flush draw comes in, and he checks again, and he checks in the dark, which we said that doesn't make sense if he's checking in the dark. If he has any draw, combined with the speed with the way he called flop and turn. So at this point, it looks pretty obvious, as does to JRB, who bets comfortably with ace king, that he's up against the one pair hand.
Yeah. There's a process that happens right there, at least for me when I play, before making a bet on the river like that. Like what I always do is I check in with myself and like everything that we're talking about. Okay, he snap, check, flop, and turn. I just like check in with myself right there and create space for me to be like grounded in my thought process and grounded in what's happened, because the unconscious will take over, right? So I'll be like, okay, he snap checked to this and that, and then like I'll look at the opponent and I'll like really ground into like what am I perceiving and like where am I in the present moment, and just ground into that. Because if you don't leave the space there and you bet the river on a big bet when the pot's bigger, when emotions are higher, then the emotions can take you out of the present moment and back into the unconscious, which will happen to JRB.
Yeah, I'm hearing you speaking about awareness. In order to be aware of intentions of our opponent, we have to be aware of our intentions and be aware of where we're at. So if you're feeling fear, your heart is racing, and you're experiencing thoughts of like, oh my God, what if I'm no good here? Should I bet here? What if I get raised? And what if I'm wrong? And I don't want to play a big pot right now, and I don't want to risk. If we're not aware of it and we don't bring awareness to that's the space in our mind, what's going to happen is that thought process is going to take over, like it did for JRB in that spot.
Yeah, it becomes too loud. Then you can't
You can't even hear it because it's so loud. That
Yeah.
noise becomes like a white noise that drowns out, and all you hear is the white noise. And then you make in some decision based on the thought that's coming from there. So the thought could be like, he'd never bluff me here, or oh my God, it can never be good here, or if I'm wrong here, I'm gonna lose extra $200,000. So JRB never checked in with himself because that's not his habit. He just plays the way he does, and he made a bet without actually having awareness of where he's at in the moment. And where he was at in the moment is having it easy and having to be comfortable and not having to put in more money than he put in there at that moment.
Yeah, so that's a reflection of who JRB is as a person. It's also a reflection of where the game was. Everybody's wanting it easy, right? If the game is more loose, blow-up-y, there's lots of money going in, it's easier to be more comfortable with the money going in.
And then different side of you come out. So that's where JRB was in that moment. There's different sides to all of us, which comes out at different times depending on different triggers. And in that moment, JRB was in that standard, typical, his soft playing. I want to play comfortable pots. I don't want to risk too much money. I don't want to play anything that's extra crazy or that puts me to the test. I just want to play it nice and easy. And that's where he was at. But he does not have awareness enough to realize, hey, I'm in the space where if I don't bring awareness to it, I'm going to be bluffed off, or I'm going to be outplayed, or I'm going to make a decision based on being afraid and not reality of the hand. Because if he knew the reality of the hand very clearly, he consciously literally worked out the whole hand and pretty much put Eric on the specific hand he had.
Yeah, so what did he say? He said, you have ace jack. He literally said, you have ace jack, which is the same hand there.
He worked through Eric's entire thought process.
Yeah.
Of like, this is why you're blowing up right now. This is why, because you realize your hand's no good against my ace queen, ace king, and you turn it into a bluff right now.
Yep.
And he worked it through, and he consciously knew the right answer. Even both scenarios that he gave, hey, if I call here, it's going to be a really nice picture. I could see the picture of me calling and you saying nice hand and storming off.
Mm-hmm.
And I could also see the picture of me folding, and then you show me the bluff,
yeah.
and I'm going home feeling like shit about myself.
Yeah, which is interesting. So both, because I didn't even catch that, you caught that. both stories confirm that Belland has the best hand.
Yes.
But he was like,
It didn't matter.
because the unconscious is saying it's too scary. It's too much money because the thoughts, what we already said earlier, right, is I don't have enough money. I'm not, which he even said in the video, I'm not rich enough, which is a belief. Like there's 200,000 out there for the taking, but if you have the belief that I'm not rich enough to make this call because if I'm wrong, then
the only way your mind is interpreting it is I will lose 200,000. And losing 200,000 to that part of you is so much more important than winning 200,000 or whatever money's in the pot before that. That's the important thing to understand. It's not logical, it's emotional. He's more attached to the idea of how messed up it's going to be if he loses at 200K and he's wrong than the payoff of, but if I'm right, I win 200,000 and I win the money in the pot that's already there.
Yeah, so he's not even considering if he's right. There's no thought process like, what if this works out? What if my instincts are right? Which is insane because his instincts are on.
Spot on.
But in every game I've seen him play, even the one last night or whatever, he's like, why am I here? I always lose. I'll get up and leave like I always do. And so the conversation stays in the head of like, I'm not good enough to play in this game. I'm always a loser in this game. I always lose money. These guys are better than me. So there's not even a conversation in his head of like, I'm good enough to be here. My instincts are on. I know how to play. So then when it gets in the moment.
And how many of us have that version of JRB in us? We all have that version of JRB in us that doesn't trust what we're seeing, doesn't believe in what it's reading, rather make a safe choice knowing that this is a choice that's based on fear and not wanting to be wrong and not wanting to lose that money, even if it goes against all poker logic and reason. And we make the choice that's safer because the thought is saying, I'd rather not lose this extra 2,000 or extra 1,000, extra 5,000 than be right and win an $8,000 pot.
Yeah. And then after the game, and you continue that story with, well, he could have had this or this, or well, right, creating stories to cover up the feeling, not actually getting in touch with the feeling that happened in the moment, which is scarcity, not being enough, fear of being wrong, all those things.